All right, hello, everybody. Welcome to Melanin and Moonlight. I am one of your hosts, Tyrell Collins.
I'm Vernon Scott. Welcome, everybody. How are you doing, friend?
Oh, I am doing good. It's been actually a peaceful week moving into spring, but it still feels like it's long. I've been like a day behind.
I feel you there. I'm still trying to figure out what this weather got in store for us. I remember
Mhm.
last Sunday I walked outside and I was like, "Oh, the sperm is flowing. Oh my God, my car is yellow." Here we are.
Yeah,
It's that time
exactly.
of the year, and it was cold. I was like, "Okay." Then it was hot the
Yeah,
next day. Georgia, can we make up our mind, girl? Like we go through this
exactly.
every single year. I
Yeah,
don't
we
know
need
why.
to. Yeah, we need to have a talk, a long, serious talk.
Okay,
Because,
like.
this shift in mood and attitude, I'm not here for it.
I'm not. You
I'm not.
got tornado warnings and all this other stuff going on, just strong ass wind the next day, and then it's chilly as heck. Well, what are we doing, girl?
Yeah. It's like, now, look, if you're going through something, like, you could just, like, let us know in a more subtle way. Like, I
Hmm.
know you pissed off at humanity. Trust me, we are too.
Okay.
We
Look, can we get
understand. But don't like take it out on everybody, though. Like,
we
that's
could
not
we could
right.
have a therapy session, girl, so you can vent the way that you need to. Do you need to talk to Mars?
Exactly.
Sis got
Exactly.
your back. Talk to Solar if you need to.
Exactly.
Like, who you
Exactly.
need? Let us be your friend.
Exactly.
Lord. Well, friend, what do you got on your radar today for this
Oh
week?
yeah, we got some juicy conversations to happen today. So yeah, I wanted to start off by talking about, and this is not necessarily going into a whole blown soap opera Beyond the Gates. Y'all know, if y'all been listening to us for the past few weeks, we did an entire episode that was centered on Beyond the Gates, its premiere, what we're liking, disliking, things like that. Still major fan tuning in. Things are good overall, but we did have a bit of news that kind of garnered a little bit of mixed fan reaction. And so I'm gonna, I really want to talk about what that news is, but also like just very larger implications for what this has done to like previous like shows in the past. So Beyond the Gates has decided to recast the role of Dr. Ted Richardson, played by Maurice Johnson. And he is the husband, of course, of who plays Nicole, Daphne Duplay, on Beyond the Gates. And the thing is, now Maurice has not come out with a statement yet, but people were at first confused to think, oh, was that his choice to leave? Maybe he wanted to like end his contract, because contract negotiations are, going to be up, because if you're not familiar, soap operas typically, because they're on every single day, besides when news interruptions happen, things like that, holidays and stuff. Soap operas typically film about like 3 months in advance. So pretty much the first round of the actors like contract negotiations pretty much would happen around like May. And so there's just this a lot of times back and forth about what happens. But anyway, so Maurice Johnson, who is actually, I found out, he's actually from Augusta, Georgia. So
Hmm.
that's the native. I
Yeah,
was
he
like, yes.
he actually did a viewing of the show like 2 Fridays ago. I was working, so I
Hmm.
couldn't go. But yeah, he is from Augusta, so
Yeah, I
I'm
was like, all
shocked.
right, Georgia rep. So
Okay.
yeah, so he's being replaced. He's being replaced in this actor is going to debut in May by a very veteran actor, Keithy Robinson. And so yeah, I mean, Keith is wonderful. He's a very talented actor. Some of his roles are not coming to me immediately, but like, if you know like him, he was in very popular movie. He played Lauren London's boyfriend in This Christmas. He's very much had like very other prominent roles.
He's
Um,
Cece and Dreamgirls.
yeah, Cece and Dreamgirls. Yes, yeah, obviously, yeah, more prominent roles, absolutely. Yeah, so it's just for whatever reason I was blanking on like the things he's been in. But like, he was also like in the Tupac movie. He was in like the show Saints and Sinners. Just very, very talented actor. So that's the good news. At least they are replacing, they're having the role to be filled with somebody who could carry like like I think the gravitas of that role. But some people are surprised and disappointed by, of course, Maurice Johnson's departure. They've been praising him for his performance, and things like that. But one of the things I was worried about before I saw who was recasted in the role was something that I'm glad that Beyond the Gates is seeming to avoid for right now, and we'll see what they do in the future. But a lot of people were having this conversation about addressing colorism when it comes to
Mm,
casting. And so, because of that, like a soap opera like Beyond the Gates is lauded with, for centering on this predominantly black cast and its affluent black family, which is rarely that you'll see on daytime television, of course. Discussions about colorism, this conversation about favoring light skinned, individuals over darker skin complexions has always been a very heavy conversation. And so fans were very relieved when they saw that, okay, even though Maurice Johnson is being replaced, he's being replaced by another dark-skinned brother.
mm,
So it's not just about the talent, but it's also about keeping the racial and kind of ethnic background, kind of like intact a little bit. But the reason why I wanted to bring this up was because for right now, Beyond the Gates is, kind of avoiding it, which, like I say, fans' reactions have come with like, okay, of all the characters, like y'all could have replaced, because like the soap community is, again, it's divided. You have longtime soap viewers who are like, yeah, castings rehappen all the time. It's expected with a soap. But then you have the other half of people who are like, well, we understand that, but to have like recasting so soon though, it's like
mm,
what's kind of happening here. But anyway, the reason why I brought this up was because it lends itself to a broader conversation about what happens, the problematic aspect that happens when colorism takes form in television, because it does impact about who gets cast, how characters are written, which stories are told, and we have seen, of course, this mantra that we have lived in society and we have lived through in media about light being right, or being of lighter skin is more desirable,
mm,
and things like that. So when we think about like examples, like take for instance, classic example, Beloved show, Fresh Prince of Bel Air, the recasting of Aunt Viv, right? Janet, the original actress Janet Hubert, a dark skinned woman actress, replaced in season 4 with Daphne Maxwell Reid, a lighter
mm,
skinned actress. Two very wonderful actresses who brought very different things to the role. However, the shift was seen, of course, as the toning down of like that strong, opinionated, dark-skinned, woman that, of course, Jenny Hubert, brought to that role. And, for the kind of a little bit more docile aspect that Daphne Maxwell Reid brought to the role. And so, we've just had this reverberate even throughout, our Black shows. I think it more so to happen with white led shows. But when
mm,
it comes to like our own shows that are kind of black led, like for instance, like Grownish or Greenleaf, as much as we love Insecure, they had some, times where, it's a little bit problematic. Things like other shows like Netflix shows like Bridgerton, the Marina Thompson conversation, like all these, times where aspects of colorism, tend to just, they rear their ugly head. And so, yeah, I just thought it was an interesting conversation to have, especially with Beyond the Gates being, created from, black women. To, not necessarily, they haven't done it yet, but, probably it's going to come. I'm surprised if it doesn't come down the line, getting into aspects of colorism and the problematic things
mm.
that will arise from it. So just what are your thoughts about just either Beyond the Gates, or just the whole nature of colorism in general when it comes to media?
It's great that this is the conversation that is being had just by this small shift, because it really does change a lot in how we even perceive Ted after the
Yeah.
fact, even if he happens to have been cast as a light-skinned person. And I don't know how I would have felt about that. I think
Yeah.
initially I would just be like, okay, we got a new Ted. I kind of wanted the old Ted, but
Hmm.
adjust to it well. But I know somewhere I might think, okay, has this been a shift to make him a more attractive person to a wider audience, or did we make him
Hmm.
lighter in terms of getting a softer response from the audience for whatever it is that's coming out with the infidelity, so that we kind of connect a little bit more on him? Because if we think about how the implicit impact of colorism are just being light skinned, we are a little bit more forgiving of lighter skin tone people than we are darker skinned people. So that's
Yeah.
another thing I'll be thinking about too.
Yeah. And yeah, and that's the thing, because like we say, I mean, like I said, right now, Beyond the Gates is avoiding it because Keith Robinson is a dark skinned brother. So I mean,
Hmm.
we're not having to worry about it with Ted's character right now. But also, I'm just going to speak candidly. I mean, we can see that in implicit bias with the interracial relationship right now that's going on
Hmm.
between Martin and Smith and Smitty.
Yes.
Because like the things that Martin is saying to that man on this
No, but
show,
really though,
it's like, well,
this
damn
ain't
well, Martin
okay.
would not be talking to no black man, to another black man, black SGL man like that.
Who and even if Martin happened to be a darker skinned guy, I don't think Smitty would have been accepting as much of that
No,
either,
no, yeah, you're right.
because like, but I also feel as though if Martin happened to have been darker skinned,
Mhm.
that the audience would have been reacting to him a lot more negatively too,
Yes.
because like we recognize it as same gender loving people and just like, yeah, that's
Mhm.
not going to fly. But we also have to think about dark skinned men when it comes to being in relationship with other with
Yeah,
women, and how, and the soap opera viewership is women, heavily on women as well.
yeah.
So it's like, will they be a lot more forgiving of that if he happened to have been a darker skinned guy, or been like, oh no, that's not
Mm.
okay. You don't talk to this white man like that. What's going
Exactly.
on here?
Exactly. And then even just the subtle nuances about what we're seeing being portrayed, because it's interesting that we have like Carla Mosley, who is a lighter skinned, woman, that she's been the one that's been in like the most like love scene so far. And yet
Mhm.
we have of course, like, the show has an array of, of various spectrums of, colors. But I
Mhm.
do find it interesting, and this may be the actors' choices as well, because some actors are okay with having more intimate, scenes and things like that. I tend to find it interesting that the guy Tim, I can't remember what his last name is, Timothy, what's his name, who plays Bill. I can't help but notice, of course, and you probably have noticed too, that him and the actress who plays Haley, the new, wife, quote unquote, the homeworker, um, obviously Haley is a dark skinned woman. And you
Mhm.
ever notice that their intimate scenes are always skipped over?
Oh, it is.
Yeah. So yeah, whenever they are like, we'll see like them kiss or things like that, but we'll never see like the love, like the actual love scene between the two of them.
And it's also more animalistic too, if you
Yeah.
really think about it. Like when because we said that, I immediately thought about Danny and what's
Mhm.
Ted's nephew's name?
Andre.
Andre.
Hmm.
Whenever they had their sexual encounters, it was very passionate, it was very
Yeah.
loving. It was really, really, brought you to it. But
Hmm.
on the flip side with them, it's like, okay, we know that they're about to have sex. They're
Hmm.
tearing each other's clothes off. It is not like very
Right.
soft.
Yeah.
Now, I would say a counter argument would be that first episode between what's her name, Naomi and her
Hmm.
husband,
Right. Yeah.
Jacob,
Yeah.
because
Jacob.
they did have a sensual moment. I wouldn't say
Hmm.
that one was very animalistic,
Right.
but the aftermath kind of was. Just to, let me go ahead and put my stuff back together. But you know, so I don't know.
Yeah, no, but it's interesting to see like which couples like get like screen time for
Hmm.
intimacy and, things like that. Which to me, I mean, me as a viewer, and this is just me personally, I don't necessarily need to have every couple to be like hot and heavy on the show. Like, I don't
Hmm.
need to necessarily see every couple, having scenes or, things like that. But I do find it very interesting that, and it could be a writing choice, it could be the actor's choice. Because
Hmm.
being a soap opera watcher, I have watched other soaps where it has come out in interviews where some actors are a little bit more conservative and, so they don't necessarily like
Hmm.
to be as fully intimate or, fully, obviously, because if you're watching a soap, soap is about steamy, love scenes. I mean, that's what the soap opera genre is, built on. But you may have an actor who's okay with like having his shirt off, but, he may not necessarily be as comfortable, with the full on, like love, intimate scenes versus others or what have you. So I just find it interesting, and it also because the actors who play Bill and Haley also play this story where there's this big age difference because he's old enough to be her father too.
Hmm.
So they may not choose to portray that on screen. So it's just one of those, kind of, just nuanced things. But I think that conversations like this, though, are really important because with talking about the media and the industry, casting dark skinned actors in romantic, complex, and leading roles is ever important. Being intentional about how skin tone plays
Hmm.
into storylines and desirability is important. And these are conversations that I wish were happening, like obviously in writers' rooms, in casting rooms, because I think the surface level conversation would be like, okay, if you're a casting director or you're in the writer's room, you could just be like having an attitude about, oh, okay, well, we're writing this role. And so since we need to create a balance, let's just write somebody dark skinned in this role or somebody light skinned in this role or whatever. So like people won't complain. But it's really about understanding the why is
Hmm.
important. Listening to audience and creators who challenge internalized biases within communities of color and media spaces. So it's not just about you trying to appease a fan base or you trying not to look like the bad guy. It's about you really understanding about why this is important. And so again, I'm glad that for right now, even though of course people will of course miss the actor of Maurice Johnson, he's been doing great in the role. He's a very good looking guy, chocolate brother, the fact that they are keeping his character a dark skinned man. And, honestly, it's why I've often had problems with, like, take for instance, the film that was based on, Venus and Serena Williams. Like,
Hmm.
of course, love Will Smith as an actor. Will is a phenomenal actor. Do I believe like he should have played that role? Personally, for me, no, just because I feel like there are things that Venus and Serena Williams' father had to challenge as a dark skinned black man that to me, what I don't know if was like explored or complicated in the movie. So for me, when I thought about them making this movie, I was thinking of, having somebody like a Don Cheadle or, like
Hmm.
somebody who could carry the gravitas of that role. Not to say that Will Smith did not do his thing. I mean, he phenomenal actor, of course. And if it was one of those things where Venus and Serena, they wanted him to play the father, of course, that's their ever given right. It's their story, it's their movie. But it's just that those are certain things that are not thought about, in situations like that. We're gonna cast an actor who we know that can bring in a box office,
Yeah.
box office numbers,
And if I remember correctly, I think it was their father who wanted Will.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
but no, and that's another thing to think about why the father wanted a light-skinned man to play him. But
Mm,
at the same time, not to say that there may have been his own implicit, battle with colorism. Of course, if I had to choose anybody to play me, I don't have a list. But if
mm.
Will Smith was one of those people, just because of how dynamic of an actor he is, I might go ahead and throw my, like,
Yeah,
go
go
ahead and
ahead.
do
Yeah,
it.
exactly, exactly.
But
And like I say again, that was just my own personal preference. Like I say, it could have been Venus and Serena. Like you say, it could have been obviously the father's decision. So hey, if you want Will play, Go, you should, I think, for especially if you're the person speaking about who's playing
Mm,
you in a biopic, you should be able to pick whoever the hell you want
that is
to,
true.
you
That is
know.
true.
So, that's just my personal, opinion. But yeah, I just think that, yeah, these conversations are really important to have. And,
Hmm.
it's to give, it's to stop this perpetuation and this harmful message that lighter skin is more beautiful, lovable, and valuable, even within spaces meant to center Black and people of color experiences, and therefore it erases dark skinned characters from nuanced storylines, or if it is centered on them, being reduced to villains or comic relief or background
Hmm.
roles, all these types of things.
And
So,
another example I would throw out there, and it's coming from Insecure,
mhm.
is the willingness of forgiving Nathan versus Daniel when the show was
Okay.
really popping and everything.
Yeah.
Like, and also the sympathy that came with or the understanding that came with Nathan and his mental illnesses and whatnot that I don't think
Mhm.
would have been applied the same way if it happened to be Daniel,
Yeah.
where it would have been more of the okay, you just go ahead and work through your stuff, Daniel. It is what it
Mhm.
is, but it's not doesn't need to take you back or anything like that. You were gone for all these months and now you decide to come back up. No, we're not handling that. However, with
Yeah.
Nathan, it was more of those conversations. Issa, forgive him. He was gone. He's so
Mhm.
cute and all this other stuff. Like that's the conversation that was going on
Okay.
about who should Issa choose around that time. And
Mhm.
Daniel was not a candidate because of that incident where he was like, you essentially he came in her side of her mouth, whatever, and all this other stuff. And he was like, I guess we're even. And it was a horrible joke, but I'm just like, there's some grace that we can give to this man for that situation versus
Exactly.
like
Exactly.
we could take it all into context, but I really do feel like a lot of the forgiveness that was given to Nathan was because he's a light-skinned, very
Yeah, got them
attractive guy.
eyes,
Not saying
yeah.
Daniel is not, because Daniel's fine as hell. But like
Mhm.
I think that played a lot of a role in why people were very, very Nathan centric in that conversation. And poor
Mhm.
Jay Ellis, nobody was on your side for the most part until, he happened to get another woman pregnant. Then a lot more people was just like, okay, he should be back with Issa. I don't get that.
Yeah, mhm,
But,
yeah,
but anyways, I was
yeah.
Team Daniel. Uh, but
But just to put it out there.
right. I do have to mention this is according to Beyond the Gates though.
Mhm.
I was having a conversation with my best friend and she put a little bit of things in perspective because last time when it came to Haley, I was like she's in her 20s and all that and I was giving her grace. And then we started to do the soap opera math.
That is funny.
It's it, things get a little bit the
Mhm.
perspectives change when you actually sit down and do some math because we're trying to figure out how old is Martin, right? Because he seems to be very
Yeah.
up there. His
Yeah,
kids are
that's the thing. That
teens.
I have had the hardest time getting around like the certain age. And mind you, I think that they've done that on purpose because like, you have veteran actresses like, Tamara Toomey,
Mhm.
like, I mean, who looks absolutely like a goddess. And like typically we do that with families where, especially with Black families, like we look young. Like we can like
Mhm.
literally pass a mother and daughter off as sisters, and
Mhm.
things like that. But yes, it's like certain age-wise casting, I'm like questioning, like why? Why did we decide to
Exactly.
go this route?
So, in that conversation, my best friend and I, we came to the conclusion that Martin has to be in his 30s, right? And
Right, yeah.
he is either similar age or older than Naomi, because they
Mhm.
treat both of them like they've been in their adulthood for quite a while,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, because
So,
they're technically the older children. Yeah.
And because Naomi and Haley went to law school together, and I
Mhm.
was like, whoa. So if Naomi is in her close to her 30s, that means this
Mhm.
heifer, Haley, oh, she knew what she was doing. She
Mhm.
ain't in her early
Yeah, and
20s.
and I think that it's not really going to be a thing that's talked about because in the soap opera world, where you could see a kid one day that look 10, they want to age up the character. So, if you
Hmm.
don't know what swords is, look it up on Google. It's the soap opera's rapid age, where you can see a child on screen who's 10, and next thing you know, they 15. Like it's like what the hell just happened? Because they just needed this to work. And soap operas have been doing that for like eons. That's not really a surprise. And people
Hmm.
just, they go with it. So I really don't think it's gonna be like a thing. But that is a very good point to like bring up. And especially when you have like a canvas cast of characters too, it's
Hmm.
like hard to like a lot of times get those beats specifically right because you're having to have like your matriarch and your patriarch, like of course with Vernon and Anita, and then you're having to have like your children who are like your adult cast, like your Nicole and Danny and Ted and just that kind of range, and then their children, which are technically supposed to be like the young
Hmm.
cast of Naomi, Martin, and things like that. But then it's kind of like, then you can then move into like the next kind of like a little generation as well, because Kat and Danny's other Chelsea, because
Chelsea.
of the fact that they're like the like influencer age, and I do like how they've kind of done that because that is typical of like older siblings. Like you say, Martin and Naomi, they are those older siblings prospectively. So it's kind of like being a little bit removed from like that a little bit from that social media kind of influencer
Hmm.
age, like how we are, but still having grown up with it versus like Kat and Chelsea, with being like enthralled in it. So
Hmm.
I kind of, I see what they did there, but yeah, sometimes it's like, okay, like why they
Yeah.
do it?
And at minimum, Martin is 35 because he's running for president. Uh,
Yeah, and then that was another thing I was kind of questioning. I'm like, okay, so we just jumping from president, like whatever happened to like we going from congressman to president, like whatever happened to like the Senate, and like they,
hmm.
so we just doing that? Okay,
Right, right.
maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I need to not question. I'm honestly
You heard what Vernon said. Slow your ass down. So,
exactly because the way Vernon read, I was gagged.
Chalet, I was like, ooh,
I
Granddaddy
was gagged.
said, you got a history, fam, and you going to do this? Oh,
Yeah, and
okay.
when he told him you letting your arrogance override your common sense,
Woo, Chalet. The Reeds were ready that day. You know there was somebody black on that.
oh yeah, oh yeah. Mm.
Side note, I'm turning into a Vanessa stan. I don't know why, but I
Oh,
think
but
it's
okay.
because she's out here living her best whole life. And also Chelsea, because Chelsea and this couple that she's with, I'm here for
Yes.
that.
That is something else I love that they did. They did like a very opposite thing with Chelsea and Kat that I really love because you would expect because Kat is the one that's more of like, the outspoken one, the one
Hmm.
that's in social circles all the time and things like that, that you would the fact that Kat, expressed to Tomas about, her being a virgin and, things
Hmm.
like that,
No
you would
touchy.
expect I think make the assumption that, that's not Kat, that, of course she's flirtatious, she's a beautiful young woman, but you just wouldn't expect that versus Chelsea, who's a little bit more quiet, even though she's in the spotlight. And the fact
Hmm.
that they've kind of switched their personalities a little bit, where Chelsea is the one that, hey, hey, poly fam out there, like we getting into a little bit of poly territory with, the things that Chelsea's doing with the fact that she's seeing a couple right now and things like that versus like Kat, she's really trying to get to know Tomas, and the whole aspect of virginity came up and things like that. So I was like, that was actually really, I think, really cool of them to do with the writing, to like have something unexpected come from these two young ladies.
Exactly, exactly. Ah, speaking of unexpected. All
Yeah,
right.
yeah. So let's get into another one of our topics for tonight.
So something I want to bring up is the importance for a therapist to have a therapist, and those who
Yeah.
are training to be therapists. If you hear this
Mhm.
podcast, go ahead and jump into your own therapy sessions, okay?
Mhm.
Because personally, I am tired of meeting with a client and they tell me something. Because as a therapist, my main goal, especially when it comes to clients, is not to override anything that the previous therapist told them because I don't know their background. I don't know what they,
Mhm,
the treatment and all this has. And who am I to say that they were in the wrong? Now, if you come
mhm,
to me, you tell me that your therapist was pretty much, having conversations with you about their personal life and it was a recurring basis and that you started to feel as though that became their therapist. Oh, this is triggering me from my first therapist. Oh my God. What she actually made the statement, sometimes I feel like you are my therapist. And I'm like, girl, I need a new one. And I found a new one. But whenever I hear that from other clients, I'm just like, that's not okay. And the reason why is because a client should
mhm,
not feel as though they are paying you to
mhm,
be their therapist, for one.
mhm.
They should be paying you for you to be the therapist in the room. Okay,
Exactly.
you're the one that's been trained in these modalities. You've had the years of experiences of seeing other clients. I get that sometimes things get hard and you do want some outside support, but your client cannot be that. There's boundaries for a reason, and we need to respect those boundaries.
Mhm,
One of the main reasons why I push for therapists to meet with their own therapist is because there's something, at least in my training, that's called self of a therapist. And if you don't really understand yourself and your own triggers and how certain things may impact you, how are you effectively teaching your clients this stuff? And how are you removing yourself and your own biases outside of the sessions to make sure that your clients' needs are the priority, right?
exactly.
If you're not cognizant of who you are and what your stance on certain things are, sometimes we can easily bypass our clients' needs by communicating our own personal needs. Now, yeah,
Completely.
working in the best interest of your client is a thing, but if you don't know what that means because you're working in the best interest of your own understanding, you're failing your client, okay? That's
Mhm,
like, get the help that you need. And if you're not seeing clients yet, make this your make the decision to schedule your appointment today, okay? Work through
mhm,
your things so that your things don't outweigh the importance of what the matters that your client is bringing you. This is if you're going in a psychiatry program, counseling program, marriage and family therapy program, psychologist program, anything that it may be. Work on your things. I almost cuss. Work on your things, so that your client doesn't have to bear the weight
yeah,
of your problems.
exactly.
Any thoughts?
Oh yeah, no, just to echo what you just so wonderfully said when you first mentioned the nature of therapists needing therapists. I've always been very in tune with therapy. Actually, if I just speaking candidly, like I love this is why I love Vernon, my co-host Vernon so much because I love the fact that if I wasn't in writing and education, I probably would be in the therapy field, the psychology field. I actually minored in psychology in college, so I love the therapy field. So immediately when you talked about this, I immediately thought about the nature of the emotional labor and just vicarious trauma that therapists
Hmm.
have to carry because client when you're a therapist and you're seeing clients are sharing stories of grief, abuse, systemic injustice, even notions of self-harm even. And while therapists are trained to hold these experiences professionally, therapists are also human at the very end of the day. So when you have repeated exposure like that, you can that exposure leads to again that vicarious trauma, that compassion fatigue, that burnout. So even when therapists compartmentalize the nervous system, right, registers trauma, right? So it's very important that therapists that therapy in it general does help in fact therapists process what
Hmm.
they carry. And even as you were mentioning earlier about bringing the past like into sessions, right? That's immediately what another thing I thought about. Therapists having their own wounds, like bring old wounds, to the surface. you know, say for instance, like if I was in like a therapy session with you, if you haven't dealt with your parental neglect, right? You know, what I tell you in a session about my parental neglect may activate, like a triggering response for you because you've had a similar experience. And so
Hmm.
now you're not necessarily coming at the approach in an objective way, so without support, and I believe, if and forgive me if I'm not using the term correctly, it's a psychological term called countertransference,
Hmm.
right? So when we're projecting personal feelings onto our clients, that speaks volumes,
It
you know
surely does.
and just even like, I think it's a ethical, of course, like, responsibility, I think, honestly, for therapists to go to therapy, because it's not just seeing, because I don't like necessarily the aspect of the language, like therapy is like the
Hmm.
new age of kind of like self-care thing, like, no. Therapy is also like is a part of like ethical professionalism,
Hmm.
because therapy is allowing you to know what it means to be present and be in tuned with your clients. If you are a therapist, what does it mean to actually set healthy boundaries, with your clients? What does it mean to maintain objectivity, you know? And even just like you said at the very beginning, what you said, therapists benefiting from like the same off like they benefit from the same tools that they offer. It's kind of like, why would I want to go to a therapist who hasn't not been to therapy, or who doesn't want to
Hmm.
seek their own therapy, right? Because
Hmm.
again, you're human. And I think any good therapist knows that anytime you're talking about a healing process, or, what have you, that's not a non-linear, I mean, it's not a linear process, it's a lifelong process.
Hmm.
And I do know of certain therapists that, I've actually talked to in person, and I've, watched like their YouTube channels and stuff. They speak very candidly, not necessarily what goes on in sessions, of course, but they say to relate to their clients, they will share outer experiences about
Hmm.
their therapy, because they want their clients not to view them in this kind of pedestal aspect, like to say like they're above healing, but they're a part of the same human process of healing, you know.
Hmm.
So yeah, I definitely think that, therapists definitely need their therapy.
Yeah. And with being the person in the chair, just to put in the, to
Yeah.
be the client, helps you understand your clients a little bit more too.
Hmm.
Especially if you have not been yourself, you already understand that fear or the anxiety that exists for having your first session with somebody. So
Hmm.
think about the type of therapist that you need or want to engage with for your first time,
Yeah.
right? And transfer that experience to your clients because you can be that therapist that they need for their first time. To be the
Exactly.
person to let them know, okay, this is a safe space for you to have a conversation. And
Exactly.
speaking of safe space, are you actually developing a safe space if you don't know what a safe space feels like?
Yeah.
We really have to reflect on what that means for you as a professional. When it comes to how you do your practice. And again,
Hmm.
this is not me saying that this persons are the persons that some of my clients brought up in the past that they cannot do their job because look, a lot of people can do great at their job
Hmm.
while also harming the individuals at the same time.
Right.
Um, Meaning in certain aspects they help them meet their goals, but did they do it in a sufficient enough way so that when it does come to the point where you're doing maintenance, so for those specific goals that they came into session for,
Right.
that they will not have any regression once you're done? Is there a feeling that, oh, I have to be with this person all the time?
Mhm.
And even if that's the case, are we even assessing that? Why they feel like they need to always be in therapy? And again, not to say I'm the best or that I know all the things that I'm doing. But for me, if a client tells me that they don't understand what their life will be like without me in it, I'm going to have to ask questions about myself and how
Mhm.
I've been treating them in these sessions
Mhm.
because why is there anxiety here? We need to explore that,
Right.
right? So that they do feel the need to branch out without sessions. Of course,
Mhm.
things may come up later on in life and they can always come back to sessions, whatever that looks like, or find a new therapist. But so long as they've gotten to a point where they can really operate in their lives without seeing me on a regular basis, I've done my job, right?
Mhm.
And they especially did their job.
Yeah. And I don't know if this is something that you can speak to. I think one of the major, I think, scary things for me if I was a therapist would be being in sessions with clients who know better, but they refuse to do better.
Mm,
And the reason I say that is because, like, for instance, and this doesn't just come from media. I've heard stories from people who actually do this in sessions. But I was recently getting through this very popular show that came on in the 2000s. I'll keep this to myself because we talked about enough about TV. But this guy was has been going to therapy for years, and eventually at the end of the show, the therapist, her colleague, was telling her that you know that he's not better, right? He's really using therapy as a justification for understanding why he does what he does, which is, I think, part of obviously what therapy is understanding your motivations,
mhm,
your feelings about what's happening. But it's one of those things, like, from the beginning of this series to the end of this series, it's like he's been in therapy. And she finally, I think, as a therapist, has this realization that, he knows better. After years of therapy, he knows better, but he's one of those people, he just refuses to do better.
mhm,
So it's kind of like that. I think for me, that would be like a scary aspect of, like, dealing with clients. It's not to say like, oh, okay, like, my client, once my client gets to a certain place, they're healed and they move on. Of course, therapy is life work. But when you see, with like having to deal with particular clients where you can see like that flaw crack in their system, where it's like they know the right thing, like they know what to
mhm.
do, but they want to keep coming to therapy as a justification for continued bad behavior. It's like, oh yeah, I know that this is wrong, but because I'm able to internalize and process my feelings and justify why I did what I did, oh, I'm so-called claim an in tuned and better person for it.
So I will tell you multiple ways of approaching it, and especially
Mhm.
how I would. But I will say, like, therapy in general is about, at least from my training, is about making a change. And if this
Mhm.
person does not identify anything that they're doing as a problem, then of
Mhm.
course they're not going to want to make that change or do that change. And if they're just coming into the process of just understanding that,
Mhm.
and yeah, the therapist is doing their job essentially, because
Mhm.
that's the goal of that person, right? Now for me, I would not even be seeing this person after a little while,
Yeah.
because me, like, I'm uncomfortable accepting payment from a client who's not willing to work on anything that they're looking to move or change anything. Now, if we're doing maintenance, which is like once a month, sure,
Mhm.
you can come in, give me updates on the things that you've been doing, just so
Right.
that you can share that, because you just feel comfortable with venting every now and again, and you don't feel like you have any other safe space to do so. So you're just essentially paying for a safe space to vent.
Mhm.
Cool. Venting is therapeutic. That's fine.
Mhm.
But if a client, but that's usually clients who've come to me for the purpose of meeting a certain goal, and they've made that, and they've made the changes
Mhm.
that they're looking for in their life. But if this person's not really trying to do anything, change any behaviors, be a disruption, like let's say if they're causing dysfunction in their family and they're happy of doing that,
Mhm.
I'm just gonna be like, there's not much I can do for you here.
Right.
Do you want me to make any references for you?
Mhm.
Send you over to somebody who's just willing to listen to you vent? Because there are
Mhm.
people who will do that for you. I just
Right.
don't want to be a part of that.
Exactly. Exactly.
So it
Yeah,
just
no, and that's
depends.
real. And that's real. And I think that that's where this therapist in this show that I was watching, she eventually had to come into the realization of, I think she was having that inner conflict thing where she feels like she could really like save him from
Hmm.
himself. And in a way, like, she, did in a way, because like he's much more reflective about the things that he does. But at the end of the day, he still chooses not, I would never even necessarily say wrong, but like I say, it's like he knows better,
Hmm.
but he just refuses to do better. So it's like she said, she has to come to this point at the end of the series where she's like, no, we can't do this we can't do this
Hmm.
anymore. Like by you continuously coming here, it's almost like she's been enabling, bad behavior by having him to have a place where he's coming to her and justifying the
Hmm.
things that, like almost like he does,
Hmm.
despite the work.
Like one of the main questions I ask my clients, especially, oh, I love asking this with couples too, but are you open and willing to commit to doing something different? And if the
Hmm.
answer is yes, we can see each other, we can go ahead and have these sessions and we can see what we can do that will work that's different.
Hmm.
But if you say no, I'm just going to ask you, okay, so what do you want me to do here for you?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Why, yeah. Yeah. It's like,
Like,
why am I here? Yeah.
why
Why
am
am
I
I
here?
here? Hmm.
Because my goal is to get you both to do something or get you individually to do something
Visually. Right.
different.
Yeah.
And you already told me
Hmm.
that you don't want to change anything. Why am I here? It's either you
Hmm.
had a desire to do something different, which I can work with, even if it's a small thing that you want to change. Let's look at what that small change may be. But if you just feel like you're just absolutely perfect and there's absolutely nothing that I can help you with, I'll be happy to help you find somebody else because my rates are too expensive for you to just be paying out of the wazoo for nothing. So
Exactly.
I'm not going to do that for you. Now, there was something else that immediately came up related to that. Um, dang, ADHD brain. It'll go real quick. Oh well, it's not that important. Anyways, but another thing related to the conversation about seeking therapy. Oh, dang. Now it sounds like I'm saying that this person needs therapy, which she does. But that's not why I'm having this conversation. But it's related to Jess Hilarious. Now,
Oh, yeah.
for those who are familiar with the Breakfast Club, she has been the replacement of Angela Yee, and she's been there about a year or two now.
Mm.
Of course, there's been transphobic remarks that she's made, homophobic remarks that she's made, colorist remarks that she's made. She's made some problematic statements, but of course, it's the Breakfast Club. I don't look for them to
Right.
do
Yeah.
anything that is non-problematic, anyways. So she fits in my perspective. Some people may disagree. They think it's a lot more progressive than it really is. Redefine progressivism in your own ways. Love that for you. But recently, she's been out on maternity leave because of her baby. I think she had a son or a daughter. I don't know. She had a child, right? And love that for her. And as a stand-in, they hired someone on. Her name is Lauren. I forget her last name.
I think her name
Um,
is like I'm saying, it's Lauren LaRosa. LaRosa. Yeah.
There we go. Yeah, they hired Lauren to sit in for you know, Jess's maternity leave. What not too many people expected was that Lauren was going to be amazing at the job. I don't know
Hmm.
why they didn't think that, but that's their own personal feelings or not really thinking about what may happen. Um, but as a result, after maternity leave, Jess has returned, and there's been some animosity on set. And she put out this video last week, which had a lot of people starting to think that she was on the verge of being fired, which personally, if she gets fired, I truly don't care, but I don't think that's happening. Um, and then they had a conversation on air where Jess, talked about the video. Lauren put her input in on that as well as Charlemagne. They just, had a candid conversation about what that was. And one of the things that really stood out to me, and this is just going on the firing aspect, is that the way Lauren worded things is that as though that she is wanting to work with Jess in such a way that they both have shine, that they both have a space
Hmm.
in this, that they both can have their parts on the show without anyone stepping on anybody's toes. It's not Lauren's fault that people love her. It's not Lauren's fault that
Right.
people like her commentary. It's just the audience likes her, and they also want Jess there too, and she's trying to create a space for both of them the best way that she can. And
Mhm.
unfortunately, with Jess, she's feeling as though she's being pushed out, which there may be
Mhm.
some truth to that, but there may not be some truth in that. But I bring up this conversation to highlight the importance of emotional regulation, right?
Yes.
If, let's say, in this moment, and this is for any person out there who maybe feeling as though the new person is pushing them out, if we take stock of what's going on around us, if we identify the emotions that we're feeling, be it feeling abandoned, feeling left out, feeling as though feeling anger, we have to really start to understand and process that. We need to take a moment, take a breath, get the facts beyond what we are feeling, okay? um if in this moment of using Jess, if she actually took a moment to breathe,
Mhm.
recognize what she was feeling in a moment, be it anxiety that she may be losing her job, feeling as though people are not going to be there to support her and all of that. If she were to acknowledge that and then have a genuine conversation with Lauren off air, off the internet and all of that, and
Yeah.
talk to her about this is what I'm feeling. Is there some truth there?
Right.
A lot of this drama would not have come up
Yes.
with that. And
No.
I
Yeah.
want more people to think about in their personal lives how much drama they will not be in if they just chose to regulate their emotions.
Yes. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, it's a very interesting case because, like you say, I don't particularly tune into the Breakfast Club just because of the let's just call it messiness of the platform.
Mm-hmm.
I never have. A lot of people in there I've never really cared for their, you know, I respect everybody's opinion, of course, but it's to me, it's like a lot of times the way that you go about speaking about topics. I think that they have had a platform where they have disrespected a lot of, of their former hosts, guests, and things like that made people like feel uncomfortable. So I just have never gotten really behind the Breakfast Club. I respect
Mm-hmm.
what they do overall in giving people, their voice, their platform, things like that. But it's just has never gravitated with me. But I think with Jess's situation, though, I think when when you're a celebrity, as I say in air quotes, in an industry where branding and media polish matter, like her public frustration clashes with the platform's preference, right, for controlled controversy, not uncontrolled chaos. And that's
Mm-hmm.
something that people really don't understand. So when you are again, quote unquote celebrity, you are a brand. And even when things are done to you that you feel are dirty or that you may have some questions about, you have to think about the long term consequences. Now, again, this is where we talk about emotional regulation. When you in your feels and you in that space, you're not really thinking about that. But as you say, that is the time to use tools. I do not understand, nor do I will care to understand about this like immediate reaction age that we live in, where immediately when something is done, you got to get to your phone and do your Instagram live for it. It's not to say that things should not be talked about or whatever, but how about taking 24 hours before posting or going live about something? To really sit on something before you actually speak on it. So it could have been a situation where, it because I don't technically know what was said, what she said in addressing, in addressing Lauren, but it could have been one of those things, like you say, she could have spoke with her in private, or if she wanted to even address it on air. It could have been something simple as like, listen, I want to understand the direction of the show, right? How does my role fit in and how we're moving forward?
Mm-hmm.
I've given a lot to this platform and I just want to know where's my place here. Because Lauren seems obviously to have a very great, reception. We love her. It's kind of like let's as people, let's build instead of like, creating a divide, right? And then to me, I also think that again, you have to leverage your platform. Now, I've never necessarily followed her comedy, but knowing that obviously she's a comedian, again, she's a brand in her own right. You could address any type of tensions you have through your comedy. If you're doing stand up, if you're doing shows or whatever, to make it kind of like a diffusing point. You could do behind the scenes vlogs to tell your story, to give more
Mhm.
nuance and context, or wait till actually something happens to drop a controlled interview or whatever. Because for me and me personally, I always tend to say that, of course, people thrive on scandal. However, scandal for me fades fast. But when you are about strategy, strategy leaves a legacy.
Mhm.
And I've always kind of felt like that. Like people, it's just kind of like how people will always say, like, people may not always remember what you said, but they will remember how you made them feel.
That part.
You know, I tend to feel like that about when like controversy happens or whatever. A lot of times the scandal in itself, whatever people are talking about, that will fade because we live in a very rapid age where it's like, okay, something is hot for 5 minutes and then we talking about something else. So that will fade, or it may not necessarily be as prevalent. But when you induce strategy, hello, do we need to talk about the whole Cassie and P Diddy thing? Like, okay, let's not even go there. But it's like, but when you have a strategy, baby, you leave a legacy.
Mhm.
So I just feel like with this situation, media culture rewards visibility and punishes lack of control. So when you do not, as you like you were saying, have emotional regulation as a tool, then you're not thinking about the longevity of yourself. Like you're basing things off of what you feel in the moment.
Mhm.
So for me and her, like we say, we don't really know if this is true or not, her firing, things like that. And even if it is true, work from a place of power and not pain.
Mm.
And
And
so,
just to, and this is the therapist in me, not necessarily therapizing or anything, but this is what I will literally tell a client.
mhm,
Um, and this is just, or even friends, not, it's, I can't even say it's really therapy related. Because for somebody who might automatically think, oh, Vernon is just invalidating her feelings, or even Tyrell's invalidating Jess's feelings in this. n- it's not that her feelings are not valid, because those things
absolutely.
are real. Those things are true. The fear that she's experienced, the anxiety that
Yeah,
she's experiencing, there may be some truth to that.
right,
There's some validity towards that. And just her existing and feeling that threat of replacement is what makes that feeling valid. It's
hmm
just when we regulate our emotions a lot better, we
yes,
can understand the validity in what we're feeling and then have a conversation about it with the
right,
people that it needs to be had with, right?
right,
We It's helpful for all of us to begin that process of really understanding how certain things make us feel and talk about it. Because what I saw in the response was a black woman trying to support another black woman the best way that she can.
mhm.
Meanwhile, being attacked by this same black woman for just doing her
Yeah.
job.
But we have a history of that, and that's what has, to me, one of the things that has always kept us back as a people. We
Mhm.
feel like there can't be multiple of us at a table. We feel
Mhm.
like, if you are getting this shine or you're having this job or this position, there's only room for one of us.
Mhm.
And I think that's something we've all, I think, just as a people, have felt threatened by, because we have lived in a time and a culture where we have to excel. And if we see somebody else excelling in like that same avenue or that same venue, we now view it as competition.
Mhm.
Instead of saying like, hey, this is a platform where, even though we've had women obviously who have been like, you know, co-hosts, obviously, host in the past or whatever, we're now bringing new and different energy into this space from our various perspectives. And
Mhm.
so I just think that one of the lessons here in any type of situation where this is happening, where what you feel in a moment obviously may validate your pain, but it can damage your leverage,
Mhm.
especially when you are in a public spotlight. I always root for more strategic communication because that is more powerful than venting. And when you do
Mhm.
have a platform, when you do have to rely on, other factors, your team, your marketing, and things like that, the brand is bigger than the moment.
Mhm. And it even hurts your credibility even more when the person that you are misaligned with comes out and say, "No, girl, we tried to have this conversation with you to explain it. I've come to you and told you if you had a problem with me, we can talk about this like women. We can come face to face, have this conversation. You don't have to be my friend, but I do want us to have a healthy working
Exactly.
relationship." And I'm just like, do you? It from the outside looking in, it's kind of like egg on the face at this point. Like the face is
Mhm.
dropped. It fell completely off because this person is looking like they are a lot more mature in this moment than you are
Yeah, and you're
because
trying
of
to
how
make
you came
somebody
on.
the villain that's not the villain in this story, and there may not
Exactly.
even be a villain.
Right. Like there was something that was stated where it was like no one told me that this was supposed to be a show of four. It was always three. And I'm like, okay, if somebody's updated you or said that the show is supposed to have four people now, you're included in that four.
Right, yeah,
Like,
it's like, yeah, so
so
what are we doing?
what are we doing? Like maybe they did shift it up and they gave you an excuse of saying that
Mhm,
it's four. So yeah, you can say, "Whoa, y'all lied to me on that," and that's valid. They lied to
mhm,
you and they now telling you that it's four people now. Okay, cool. Is my job secure? That's what I need to know. Am I in that number? Am I in that four?
yeah,
Oh,
mhm,
I am? Cool, because I had some anxiety here. I was about to cut somebody out, but now
mhm,
I know I don't have to do that. I don't have to set that meeting. I don't have to look at the Google calendars to see when we could set up this time for us to vent
exactly,
together in private because we're not doing this in
exactly.
public. Now, not to say that we're all perfect because sometimes we do have to make public comments for those for certain people because I've done it in my past. I've done
Oh,
it.
yeah.
I would
Oh,
do
yeah,
it in my
no. No,
presence,
sometimes
but
you need to speak on
sometimes you
things in the
need
moment,
to.
and the control that keeps you sane slips through your fingers. So we
Exactly.
pretending like, oh, we need to just be prim and proper all the time.
Exactly. It's, yeah, sometimes you do have to show up and be loud, but we also have to be strategic of when. When you
Mhm.
know
Yeah,
that you're in the right
timing and
here,
place is everything.
if you know you're in the right, when you know that the evidence falls on your end, or even if
Mhm,
it's just a mistaken public perception, you can go ahead and correct that and be loud and proud as much as you want.
mhm.
But the issue is whether or not you are acting in the proper emotion and when you do it.
Right.
Like
Right.
I've come out on the internet and to live out some petty energy that I had, but I did it
Mhm.
willingly, knowingly, and full aware of what those consequences may be.
Mhm.
And yeah, we have to think about that. So
Yeah.
if you're behaving in such a way and you're not even thinking about those consequences, girl, let's go on. And not when I say girl, I'm not talking about just hilarious. I'm talking about all of us. Let's go ahead and figure this out.
Mhm. Yeah.
Sit on
Yeah.
somebody's couch, people.
Yeah. And
Whew.
again, let's make sure that just how we spoke about weeks ago, let's just make sure that the reality that we're operating in, that, our feelings are also facts,
Oh, okay.
so.
And speaking of feelings being facts and emotional regulation, the
Mhm.
video with the Nigerian mom that went viral,
Yeah.
which
Mm.
I've seen multiple videos in response to that. I have my own personal feelings. I will say let me go ahead and explain what happened before I jump into it. Okay, if y'all haven't seen the video, I think you could just search Nigerian mom blow up or whatever. So
Yeah.
essentially, what happened? There's this Black American woman who's engaged to this Black Nigerian man. I don't need to say black in front of that. Nigerian American man. I think he's Nigerian American or just Nigerian. The backstory is during the Valentine's Day thing that they had going on.
Mhm.
The mom came pretty much from what it sounds like she crashed it. And she did not like the fact that the Black American woman did not serve her food first.
Okay.
And when their the confrontation happened, I think a month or so after that, or a couple weeks after that. So the Black American woman, she was just, confronting her. It's like, hey, when it came to that situation, I did not like the way that you reacted.
Mhm.
And then the Nigerian mom, she gets angry and starts yelling at her and telling her that in her culture, the mom was supposed to be served first. This is not right. She felt disrespected and all of that. And she's just yelling at her.
Mhm.
And then eventually they take her out, and she's still angry, talking about how much this girl disrespected her. So
Mhm.
that's the context of the video. When I
Mhm.
first saw that, I was like, okay, there's some lack of cultural awareness that I'm not getting here because just from the Nigerians I know, I don't ever see them reacting this way. But there's, cultural difference, familial differences, and all that. So I'm like, maybe this issue in itself may be a lack of cultural awareness, right?
Mhm.
And then um, start hearing some people say, "Yeah, my Nigerian mom would not." And I was like, "Okay," and so I was like, "Okay." And then on top of that, I've also heard like my best friend, she raised this one's like from the content that she saw, a lot of people were like, "Would she have acted the same way if the wife happened to be white?" And I was
Mhm.
like, I already know that answer is no.
Mhm.
So I bring this up just for the sake of the conversation of the importance of having cultural awareness,
Mhm.
because it is important for us, especially if we are engaging in people, even if the couple is both Black American, um, for us to know our cultural differences, because somebody who's raised up north is not
Right.
going to have the same cultural stances as someone that's raised in the South.
Exactly.
And even when it comes to people who are outside of well, that's inside of the diaspora, but from different countries, it is important to know some of the customs and how people like to be treated. But the willingness of the mother in this situation to not even hear this young woman out was very off-putting for me. And
Yeah.
to me is disrespectful in itself,
Mhm.
because it's not as though she's not willing to adjust to the customs, but you're not even giving her a voice in her own marriage, which I'm just
Right.
like, girl, you
Yeah,
don't have to be here.
when I looked at like the video and like read on the situation and everything, I think in learning a lot from being like an only child of my mom, especially a black mother, I think that in situations like this, I really don't think that it had something to do with her. I
Hmm.
think that her as a mother, and of course, I cannot speak in the embodiment of a mother because I'm not a mother, I'm not a woman. But just from observation and what I see, I think a lot of times those situations are where mothers are reacting out of fear.
Mm,
They have this situation where not necessarily viewing this woman as a threat, but this woman is a visual embodiment of her losing her son
mm,
to his cultural tradition. So even the slightest thing that's not in line, with his cultural upbringing, she views one as a threat, and then two, she views it as disrespect. Because when, like you say, when it was addressed, my immediate aspect was that could it been like she just didn't know, or like
okay.
she just maybe forgot because it's not necessarily a part of her obviously a part of her culture. And so again, it's like the visceral reaction to it is what I disassociated with. Now, mom, it's okay, like, because you can't take away from her feelings. Like, if she felt disrespected, she felt disrespected. And
Mhm.
dealing with moms, we can't tell them that, But it is one of those things. Like, you can't take away if she feels disrespected. However, knowing to not necessarily check your mom, but also to check in with her about where's that anger coming from? Is it really about you not being served first? Or
Mhm.
is it something deeper, more so about, and speaking from the son perspective, is it more so something about me? So like to me, I think anytime you're having a aspect where you're having two cultures of people to come together, right? It should really be a cultural exchange rather than like a cultural takeover or cultural supremacy in a way, right? So, because when you're leading with this aspect of like, my culture needs to be represented in all the ways, here, it's like, okay, one culture needs to win out more than the other. So it begins to be like a competition, So we need to have aspects that honor and respect both, you know, cultures of people coming together. And like, coming from the fiance's end or even the mom's end, it's like either one of them could have approached this situation and saying, like, hey, I may not know all of your customs, but I want to learn what's important to you. And
Hmm.
and I hope that you'll also get to know me without assumptions. You
Hmm.
know, and to know even from the fiance's thing, like you say, she did a really good job at like trying to come at the mom in the right way. Because, of course, like, I really don't, at least from my perspective of what I saw, to me, I don't really think it was something that was done out of malice,
Hmm.
or an intent with disrespect. Now, if the mom felt disrespect, you can apologize for that. And not necessarily one of the apologies where, like, oh, I'm sorry you felt that way, but honestly, saying, like, okay, I am sorry that, you were disrespected. Because at the end of the day, again, that's how she feels. Again, stating her intent, that was not my intention, you know in the future I do want to be more mindful. And why don't you share with me some of the things that are really important to you, and so that way we can get to know each other. Now, on the caveat to that end, you also have to rein the mom in a little bit, and this is where sons have to
Hmm.
grow a pair. I want to use the class saying grow a pair. I'm not saying to disrespect your mother, but to also confront her, and with a loving way, as to say, like, hey, we're going to be a unified force. So the son could have approached this and said something like, hey, listen, ma, listen, I always carry the values and the traditions that you taught me. You know, I want our home to reflect that, that richness of our family, or, whatever that is. But I also love a woman whose culture has shaped her too. So this is about bringing our worlds together. We are not trying to erase you. Nobody is trying to make you feel disrespected.
Hmm.
So on that note, I'm gonna need you, because sometimes mothers, that's what they need. It's like, as a mother, as my mother, I need you to make a greater effort to meet my fiance halfway. If the fiance is also doing the work. So sometimes, even though you may not want to be stuck in the middle, sons, I'm sorry, when it comes to you and your spouse, if you are, a mama's man or whatever, I'm sorry, you're just gonna be stuck in the middle. And that goes for hetero relationships, queer relationship, it doesn't matter.
Hmm.
Moms are gonna have that thing. So you are going to naturally be caught in the middle, but it is about standing your ground, as to say, listen, I need respect to come from both ends.
Hmm.
Nobody is trying to purposely disrespect anybody. And I'm not saying that this is a kumbaya situation, but we will tackle this the best way that we know how.
Hmm.
Yeah.
See, I know that mother would not have loved me because what I do know about me is that I do not apologize for other people's feelings. And I think well, what I would have done is just acknowledge, look, I do hate that the fact of me bringing up this conversation made you feel disrespected, but I do want us to get to a point where we can have a conversation about that as well as the incident that led up prior to that. But your feelings are what you have, and we could talk about that at a later date. But that's all I can offer you at this moment. And the other part is, if she doesn't like that and she does not feel the need of creating a relationship, I am comfortable with
Yeah, exactly.
that. That's
Exactly.
I.
And no, at the end of the day, I really respect moments, even how we
Hmm.
have seen, like, in media, where especially women will choose not to engage with the mother. Like, I'll tell you one thing. One of the moments that I really like, and it's a movie that replays on TV all the time. If you're familiar with the movie Think Like a Man 2.
Hmm.
All-star black cast, Kevin Hart, Regina Hall, Terrence J, all Taraji P, and all of them. One of the moment in that movie I really liked was Jennifer Lewis's character when she decides to confront Regina Hall's character, and always taking these jabs at her, and these things. And when she Regina Hall is already in a kind of state because the wedding is not going off the way that she needs it to, and I really respect the dialogue. And when she told her, "Listen, I am not going to engage in this conversation with you because we both may end up saying something that we will regret. So, for respect for you, I am going to walk away."
That's it.
And that's one of those things where you really got to hold your tongue, because it's like, I'm already in an emotional state. I'm not trying to cross a line with you, because even though you wrong as three left shoes, you still my elder. And
Hmm.
now, mind you, I come along with your line of thought. I do not believe that just because you are an elder that you can just speak to people any kind of way that you want to, that you can talk to any kind of people that you want to. But knowing, as seeing as how my own family members and other people I know, it's kind of like that just naturally
Hmm.
comes with age. Like the older you get, the more you don't care what you say to people, or
Hmm.
having decorum with what you say to people. So it is one of those things, like in those kind of situations, I would do exactly what Regina Hall did. Like in that situation, I am going to remove myself from this conversation, because I'm not even trying to, that's one of those classes saying you can't compete where you don't compare.
That part.
And me going at you is not going to solve anything. And when situations like that come up again, it is for the man or the woman in the situation who is the center to get their parents,
Hmm.
not to get them told, but to get them to see reason and see
That part.
reality.
Hmm.
And if they can't respect that, then some decisions have to be made.
Listen, because let me find out. Oh, that's how you feel? All right. I just go ahead and happily leave this engagement. I loved you so much. I was in love with you, but I will find my healing on the other side.
Yeah. And I think for this conversation, when it comes to tradition and rituals,
Hmm.
rituals are meant to help people feel involved and help them feel honored. And it shouldn't be about a total demanding, like a demanding total control sort of situation. And again, this is a situation where there's a little bit of give and take that has to be done. The mom clearly came at her, sideways, and came at her real left. But I do think that multiple people have a part to play in situations like this. So
Hmm.
even though honestly I don't believe it was anything, from my personal view, anything that was malicious or done with ill intent, it is still one of those things that it's a tricky to navigate. And speaking of, like, and just like this situation is reminiscent not of a cultural standing, but something that my mother confided in me really recently about um a situation with a coworker where she kind of like went off on her. Like, my mom is of course an elder in the workplace, and
Hmm.
there was a situation that happened where emotions kind of like got the best of my mom, and she kind of like went off on her in text. And immediately, like the next day, she was like, "I apologize to that young lady, because like how I spoke to her, that's not acceptable." But the fact that my mom had that kind of accountability, she was able to recognize that and have that kind of accountability, again, just speaks, I think, really speaks to my mom's character. Because she
Hmm.
said, if I was that young lady, oh, I would have really felt some sort of way and dished me out. But she said when she talked to her the next day, she was like, oh, like she didn't like take it like personally or whatever. She was venting frustration. But my mom could have seen the opposite side of that. But the fact that she was grown enough, woman enough, to apologize to her, because it's like the way she came at her, completely, completely not right.
And I think that's the role that elders play in society is being the person to role model the behaviors that we want to see more in society
Mhm.
because she could have easily just been like, "Oh,
Yeah.
that's your feelings." Like I don't
Mhm,
care.
yeah.
But she's even showing her like even at my older age, I am willing to come
Mhm.
to you, respect your adultness, and even show you that look. We all have our human moments, but that doesn't mean that I cannot apologize for my, human error, and give you the respect that you need in these moments. Because I will say, some people just be irking me where I'm just like, I'm going to cuss you out. But then I remember there's a way to have conversation with people to be assertive, and then there's a
Mhm.
way to be aggressive. Do I want the aggressive side? Let's not
Yeah.
do that. That's abuse. Let's be assertive.
Yeah, and I
What
think
we're
in
not going to do.
situations, yeah, exactly. And I think in situations like that, you really have to think about what's your intended purpose with the conversation. Like you say,
Exactly.
am I doing this to speak my mind and speak my piece? Or am I trying to actively find a solution?
Exactly.
So yeah.
Hmm. All right. So my last topic has absolutely nothing to do with anything. For any person who's ever listened to many episodes of the Holiliquy podcast, you would know I have this issue with the state of Texas. It's always what the fuck,
It
Texas.
is an issue. It is an issue.
I be wanting to go to the state, and every time I'm just like, you know what? This year I'm going to make it happen. Then Texas does something else, and I'm not going to rant today. But just know it's always something in Texas. So one of the reasons why I'm not going to Texas is because they have a limit to the amount of vibrators that you can have in your own personal home. Because who said that I have to, well, not vibrators, because look, I don't really use those, but just sex toys in general. You can only have a certain number that is legally allowed throughout the state. And I think it's like six. Like,
Oh,
I have way more than that. So I'm not welcome in the state, and I'm okay with that. So fuck y'all. But I was on the TikToks, and I looked it up, and it's actually kind of true. Like they are looking to ban anime for the sake of saying that it is very pornographic. Does
mhm.
anime have its over sexualization going on every now and again? Yes, but it's also art form, all right? It's also
Yeah.
cartoons. It is they sexualize people sexualize anything. People sexualize Gumball. And I don't oh, there's a couple characters that do have breasts in there, but it's nothing like super. If someone's going to sexualize a cartoon like Gumball, anime, come on. Let's
Mm.
just stop the mess, Texas.
Yeah.
Don't take away people's anime. Granted, people can still watch it with a VPN. It's on Netflix, so how are you going to get rid of that? So, what are we doing, Texas? That's all I want to know. What are we
Yeah.
doing?
Yeah, this is it is such a confusing, bill that's trying to be passed because I'm like, so if I'm understanding correctly, it's like the bill is aiming to criminalize the possession, creation, and or distribution of what they feel is obscene visual materials depicting specifically about minors
Mm-hmm.
regarding regardless of whether the depiction actually involves children, animators, or even like AI generated images.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I tend to think, like, of course, like reading up on it, like it's gaining a lot of concern, of course, with the anime and gaming community, because of course, obviously, if we know anime features characters primarily who are minors, who have youthful appearances, obviously suggestive contexts, but it's like the bill, I think what really people are arguing though, and which I tend to agree with, is that it's the vagueness of it. Like, what is considered, I mean, if we're thinking about what is really considered obscene or what is like when
Mm-hmm.
we talk about banned books or whatever, it's like the reason why I have such a problem with banned books, like the notion of banned books, is because you don't even really give a good justifiable reason for why you're trying to ban something. You want to ban an entire book because of a half of a paragraph or a page or 2 pages out of 300 pages of something. Now you want to censor entire things. Like I've never understood that. And so with this, it's like what content is deemed illegal that leads
Mm-hmm.
to potential censorship of criminal charges for
Right.
possession of distribution, right?
Right.
And so that's what I think people are arguing. It's like the vague definitions about what is considered uh obscene or offensive or whatever. We've always lived in a media aspect like that. Art is open to interpretation. So I really understand why artists and fans and industry people are really expressing this apprehension because like this bill's like overreach is insane.
Because like even with that, if your main concern is obsceneness or again whatever that's supposed to be, what about the TV shows that expressly have women who have bigger breasts,
Mhm.
and that is pretty much the highlight of the show is to look at this woman with the big breasts, or even men wearing walk around shirtless, which let's be honest, the Republican men love. Uh, all the shade. If we, because Grinder told us, anyways. Um, those shows that can be very sexualized. Shoot, Lifetime in itself has a lot of shows where people walking around half naked. Is this too obscene? Like we
Mhm.
need, if we're going to do it, let's be do the actual work of what that's supposed to mean. But of course, it's all about control and trying to make things seem as though it's not as sexual. Well, make things seem more sexual than they are. Like, does anime have its cringe things? Yes. Regular shows have just as much cringe, but anime can be kind of explosive with it. But
Mhm.
a healthy mind is not looking at this as pornographic material.
Right.
Most people who are engaging in anime honestly don't like that much fan serve, just to be real. Like
Mhm.
for the most part, sometimes people's like, okay, that's cool, whatever. Every now and again, you could do a little skirt going up or whatever. Fine.
Mhm.
But most people who watch anime engage in it because of the story that's telling, the characters, the adventures, and all of that. And the sexual stuff doesn't come up unless people making fanfic with that character, and then they give that character an adult body, which then is when we're reaching cringe territory. For example, one of my favorite anime characters is Sesshomaru, who happens to be like a 3,000-year-old demon dog, who later on in his life falls in love with his ward, who he met when she was 12 or 6 or whatever the heck, and then he got her pregnant at age 18, which all is problematic in itself when you
Right.
think
Yeah.
about it. Very problematic.
Yeah.
But Sesshomaru is still my favorite character.
Yeah.
Like,
And here's
it's
the
an
thing,
anime.
yeah, exactly, and I think with things like this, I think that what happens when people are trying to introduce bills like this, I think that their original, and I'm not, obviously I am not some connoisseur for this. I think that because so many underhanded things are coming out, what's been happening like behind the scenes, like with children's television shows, like with the
Mhm.
whole Quiet on Set and, things like that. So many of these stories now are coming to light. I think, again, this is a situation where people are always reacting out of fear instead of understanding. And I think whenever you're trying to introduce a bill, it should not be about censorship. So one of the things that I feel like, because I try to put myself in two shoes. I am all the way for never censoring, like any type of community.
Mhm.
Any type of community that is not engaging in a goal to uh harm children or, harm society in any way. Let me clarify that. So I think that there are a couple ways that Texas could address this if they were having concerns about this. Like, one, the current wording of that bill, right, is I didn't even read the entire bill, but even just from the first paragraph, I'm like, what the hell? Like, it's so broad. It's really criminalizing like the entire genre, essentially.
Mhm.
And instead, I think when you're introducing a bill, you have to, one, try to clarify the language and avoid overreach, right? Approach it from an empathetic aspect. We're here to protect children, not punish creators or fans, right? Engaging in artistic expression. That is essentially acknowledging, like, okay, we want to protect children, even though it may be misguided. It still may be understandable. And again, explicitly saying we're not here to punish creators. And then I've always had a problem with people who want to make laws and bills, and you're not talking to people of the actual community. Actually engage with anime fans, engage with artists, engage with legal experts in this dialogue, right? We want to work with the community to protect both our children and our culture, right? So if you're having concerns about these obscene aspects, why don't you actually reach out to art artists and anime creators so that way you can actually engage with a conversation and not just make assumptions based on what it is that you feel, because again, feelings are not always facts, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, it's like, again, just thinking about, stop trying to think about the intent to harm and punish and things like that, and instead maybe introducing education or content warnings, like supportive programs, whatever it is you want to do. But just with lawmakers, stop trying to put things in a category as like obscene or not obscene. Like, this is the only way to view this is the only way to view that, because the truth of the matter is no type of art is ever that black and white.
Exactly, and I'm going to come back to this thought about they about them not actually trying to protect kids because they
Mhm.
don't care about kids. But I do
Yeah.
want to touch base on censorship because I really do feel like this bill in itself is just a way for them to get a legal grounds to do
Mhm.
all the things that they want to do in terms of censoring a lot of marginalized community,
Right.
be it black, queer, wherever the case may be. This is a way for them to have that framework to start to utilize this in a broader context by playing on people's ignorance of what anime is.
Mhm.
Because if you do pull up anime, yes, you're going to see characters with big breasts and you're going to see the occasional sexualized thing. If you've seen Food Wars, these are people who are having orgasms on a regular basis because the food is so good. But the sexualization that they are having there is related to what they are eating.
Mhm.
It plays into the comedy of the show.
Yeah.
Like it's very uncomfortable if you're watching it and somebody's like on the other side of the door, they'd be like, "Oh my God, what is he watching?" And then if
Yeah.
they actually watch the show, they're like, "This is hilarious." But
Yes.
that's what makes it funny,
Yeah.
but you're not going to convince somebody of that if you take it out of context or just show
Mhm.
them, oh, this is what this show is all about, right? So
Mhm.
I think they are doing this just to play on the ignorance of people who just automatically think that, oh, anime is supposed to be the big bad devil. And it reminds me of how people approach gaming, how you can find so many people
Mhm.
who are ready to say that, oh, my kid is addicted to this game, that game, and all this other stuff, and not just realize that the kid doesn't have an addiction. It's just that they're bored at home and they just need something to do, and the thing that they have
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
do is gaming, and you're not providing them with enough outside stimulation to
Right.
beat the game. Now,
Yeah.
not to say that there's not people who are addicted to games, because there's the thing,
Mhm.
but oftentimes it's because of the ignorance of the parents or the
Yes.
guardians or
Yeah.
even
Or
the
yeah.
adults themselves.
Yeah, and then you're just going, and then a lot of times you're not really going on what's like has been researched. You're going off of like an article that you may have seen popped up,
Hmm.
or what's like popular opinion, or just because you may come from a different time where it's like, yeah, gaming really wasn't a thing. Like, like,
Hmm.
or yeah, even though gaming was a thing, like, we were outside, we were doing this and doing that. Like, a lot of
It's
times
for
people are not
kids.
understanding that no, people are making obviously careers, of course, out of gaming. Like, this is not just for entertainment. Like, this is how sometimes people make their living. People make their living off of being influencers and content creators and things like that. And so it doesn't make it wrong. It just makes it different.
Hmm. And
Mhm.
like even with that, like because people will think like gaming in itself is for kids, people will think because anime is cartoon based, it is a cartoon, it's a Japanese cartoon, people will think that these are for kids. But the same way that we have adult cartoons, there's adult
Yeah.
anime. Like there's different genres for a reason. Like
Mhm.
you're not going to play the stuff that you'll find on Adult Swim at 3 o'clock in the morning. I mean, at 3 p.m. in the afternoon because it's not meant for kids.
Mhm.
And even if you think about Cartoon Network, when they had Toonami, they had afternoon
Yeah.
Toonami where things were
Yeah,
a little bit more for
exactly.
kids. And on Saturdays, it got progressively more adult as the
Adult, yeah.
night progressed. You still
Yeah,
had
and then
anime and all of that.
yeah, and then they even renamed the some at some point the network was renamed to Adult Swim,
Hmm.
so
So it's like there's nuance to this. And this is also plays a role in parental control. Like you are a parent, you have the opportunity to educate yourself on the things that's here that your kids are engaged in, to know
Mhm.
the warnings, what not to do there, and what is allowed. Get to know your kids a little bit better before you even make a vote on this situation.
Mhm.
Like My Hero Academia is an anime that's specifically written for a vast majority of ages.
Mhm.
However, you will have characters who are adults that have adult bodies. And they are very sexual in nature. Mount
Mhm.
Lady, oh, and ooh, my girl Midnight. Oh God, I love me some Midnight. Fine as hell. But these characters, Midnight is a dominatrix, by the way. These characters are made for the adults in the room, not the kids.
Mhm.
The actual main characters that you see a lot more of are the actual kids in all of that.
Mhm.
So it's all
Yeah.
about educating yourself. Now, back to this, they don't care about kids. Texas does not care about kids because if they did, they would not have voted for that orange motherfucker that's in the damn White House. They would not have made a space for that to happen. They would not forgive all these actual child pedos out here, P3DOs that's out here who have harmed a lot of children, even the ones in
Mhm.
their state, even the religious uh, pastors and whatnot who have harmed children in their state. They will not be but behind a pulpit if they really cared about children.
Mhm.
So if we are going to act as though that we care about children, let's do the things to make that true.
Mhm.
Let's extend how much time these sex offenders have behind bars, because
Mhm.
the vast majority only see like 2 years um or less, or don't get charged. So let's actually make the real changes and fund the rape crisis centers that's in the state of Texas, because let's be real. But yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, and also fund their education, Texas. Maybe that will help. Maybe that will show that you care about your kids. I have so much for them. I will not be moving there. I just, I feel like if I land in Texas, there's going to be somebody like, okay, Vernon, he was talking all that shit, squad the fuck up. And I'm going to be like, I'm ready. I'm here for the entire state. What's up? But, I still visit. I visit.
Right.
I think that is all I have. Anything for you?
No, I think that that's it.
Awesome. Well, I do have this little thing that I wrote up to try to end out the show.
Yeah.
But before we even get into that, y'all, thank y'all for listening. Look,
Yes.
we missed a week. We gave y'all some extra time this one. So
Look, y'all know
hope y'all
life
like
be
it.
life, and y'all don't blame us.
Right. And just to confirm, no last words for you?
Mm, no, I
I
don't
feel
know
you.
that.
Well, y'all, thank you so much for tuning in to Melanin and Moonlight, your late night space for deep, thought-provoking conversations about sex, culture, and the well-being of the Black community. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the podcast to keep the conversation going. Until next time, keep the vibes flowing and your mind open. Take care, y'all.
Bye.